The Arizona sun bled red over the jagged ridges of Dust Creek, painting the land in a glow that made even the poorest ranch look like gold. Samuel Harker leaned on the fence post, squinting at the dying light as it fell over his parched fields. His hands were rough from years of work that never seemed to pay. His cattle were thin, the well was dry, and his dreams, well, they'd long since withered like the grass beneath his boots. Folks in town called him Sad Sam, the poor rancher who'd been unlucky since birth. His wife had died young, his herd had dwindled in every drought, and every time opportunity knocked, it was only to take something else away. One dusty afternoon, a trader came riding into town, wagon creaking under crates and cages. Inside were people, native captives taken from raids, their faces hollow from loss. Among them was a woman, tall, proud, her eyes fierce even through the dust. Apache widow, the trader called her. Good worker, knows the land. $5 and she's yours. The townsfolk turned away. No one wanted an Indian widow. But Samuel, desperate for help on the ranch and haunted by a loneliness he didn't admit even to himself, stepped forward. $5, he said, pulling out his last coins. When the woman arrived at his ranch, she refused to speak. Her name, he learned later, was Aiyana. She moved like the wind, silent, graceful, unafraid. She worked the land with a kind of knowing Samuel couldn't understand. Where he saw failure, she saw rhythm. She touched the soil, tasted the wind, and said quietly one evening, "This land is thirsty." Not dead, Samuel didn't reply. He didn't believe in miracles. But that night, she built a small fire by the barn, burned herbs, and whispered prayers in her language. By morning, the sky cracked open and rain poured down for the first time in months. For days, Samuel watched her in silence, her hands steady, her eyes sharp as flint. She taught him to read the signs of the desert, to plant deeper, to listen before acting. "You white men," she said once, "you fight the land. You must learn to live with it." Her words stung, but they stayed with him. Slowly, things began to change. The cattle grew stronger, the well filled. The earth, once stubborn, began to yield. And somewhere between long days and quiet nights, Samuel noticed her in ways he hadn't meant to. The curve of her cheek in the firelight, the way her voice softened when she spoke of her tribe. But not everyone in Dust Creek took kindly to the sight of a white rancher and an Apache widow working side by side. One night, as Samuel returned from town, he found his barn torched, his cattle scattered, and a crude sign hanging from the fence. "Savage lover!" Fury burned in his chest like gunpowder. He wanted to ride into town, find whoever did it, and settle it with lead. But Aiyana stopped him. "If you fight with hate," she said, "you'll lose more than your ranch." Her calmness cut through his rage. Together they rebuilt, brick by brick, side by side, until the dawn rose over new fences and stronger hearts. One night by the fire, she finally spoke of her past. Her husband had been a warrior, killed defending their land. Her people had scattered, her son taken by soldiers. "I was bought and sold many times," she said softly. "Until you. You did not buy me. You freed me." Samuel didn't know what to say. He just nodded, the firelight dancing in his eyes, knowing that something inside him had shifted forever. By the end of that season, the ranch had life again. Neighbors came not to mock, but to ask advice. Samuel had stopped being sad. Sam, he was just Sam, the man whose luck had turned, and the woman beside him, whose quiet strength had changed everything. Spring came to Dust Creek like a promise. Green pushed through the red earth, and for the first time in years, the ranch looked alive. Aiyana walked barefoot through the fields, humming soft songs that Samuel didn't understand but somehow felt deep in his bones. The ranch was thriving, cattle fattened, crops steady, and peace hung in the air like the scent of rain. But peace, as Samuel would learn, never lasts long in the West. One morning, 3 riders appeared on the horizon, men from town with rifles slung, low and whiskey on their breath. Their leader, a man named Colby Tate, spat in the dirt and called out, "We ain't gonna let no red woman hex this town." Samuel stood firm on the porch, shotgun in hand, while Aiyana stepped beside him, unflinching. The men laughed. "She belongs with her kind," one sneered. "Not here." Before Samuel could speak, Aiyana raised her chin and said in English, calm and clear, "This land belongs to no man. It belongs to those who love it." The words struck like thunder. The men hesitated, sneered again, and rode off, but not before promising they'd be back. Samuel turned to her, pride swelling in his chest. "You're not alone," he said. "Not anymore." Days passed, then weeks. One night, a storm rolled in, wild and dark. Samuel woke to the sound of hoofbeats, dozens of them. The men were back, torches in hand. The sky lit with fire and lightning. Samuel grabbed his rifle, but Aiyana stopped him again. "No killing," she whispered. "There's another way." She ran to the barn, where she'd kept a bundle of herbs and stones from her homeland. She lit a fire that roared against the storm and began chanting, words lost to time, carried by the wind. The raiders' horses spooked, reared, and scattered into the dark. The men fled, thinking the desert itself had turned against them. When the storm passed, the ranch stood untouched. Samuel fell to his knees, not from fear, but from awe. "You saved us," he whispered. Aiyana smiled faintly. "No," she said. "The land did." Months later, word spread that Dust Creek's poorest ranch had become one of the finest in Arizona. People came to see it, to learn from it, and from her. Samuel and Aiyana never married by law, but they were bound in something deeper. Their story became a whisper across the West. The poor rancher and the Apache widow who tamed the desert together. Years later, when Samuel was old and gray, he'd sit on that same porch, watching the sun dip behind the hills, and tell young ranchers the same words she'd told him long ago. "Don't fight the land, listen to it." And every time the wind blew soft across the fields, he swore he could hear her humming still.